Hi everyone, it's Friday again. They know I've come around quickly, don't they? Fridays. How is everyone? Hope everyone's well. Obviously, we've had some updates in terms of national kind of thinking about the lockdown. We've gone from stay at home to stay alert, and that's caused lots of people to wobble a bit. Obviously, watch out for information. Mr. Vice will keep you up to date with the thinking about when, if, how, all of those things. But there's no current plans at all for the school to open. We're obviously, as a nation, watching that famous R number, and remembering, being a scientist, really interested just to look at the R number and the number of people infected. That's going to decide what happens next. And just we all need to keep an eye on that. But these assemblies are all about us connecting. You'll have seen the fantastic tweets we've been sending you about what everyone's been up to, apart yet together. It's fantastic to connect with you in this way. And this is today's assembly webinar, our Friday focus, 1 week on from the National VE Day celebrations. And last week's assembly was all about focusing on those celebrations, those commemorations of that incredible generation and all the amazing things they did, so we can have all this freedom. And obviously, we as a nation now are in our own kind of work together, a battle against a virus, and we'll keep you posted in terms of what will happen next. But our assembly today is all about being kind to unkind people, because they need it most. So that's quite a tricky idea, isn't it? Being kind to unkind people because they need it most. Let's look at why that's the best decision for our mental health and for their mental health. Because it sounds, you come across a grumpy person or a stressy person or an angry person, your natural response isn't to be kind to them, actually. If they jab you with verbal, then you jab them back. But actually, let's look at it in a bit more detail. So you'll know that we talked about the rocks before. We talked about them in another assembly recently. And what we know is that our emotions are registered in our brain in the same way that physical pain is registered. So emotional pain is registered in the same part of the brain that physical pain is. So that means that we sometimes can feel strong emotions. And if we can't process those emotions, explore those emotions, explain those emotions to ourselves, we end up with them stuck. We end up with them kind of stuck in our heads. They cause a kind of emotional wound in the way that we might have a physical wound. So if we kind of hurt ourselves, we have a physical wound, we clean that wound. And if we have an emotional wound, if someone's mean to us or nasty to us, and we don't kind of acknowledge that and then seek support from people around us, talk about how we're feeling, that wound in our head means that we end up with kind of emotions get clogged up in our brain, in that bit behind our forehead there. It's called the anterior cingulate cortex. That's where emotional pain is registered. Now, there's a simple way of practicing emotional hygiene and clearing out that area of the brain. And it's to do with being able to name our emotions. If we don't think about our emotions, if we don't process our emotions, they can all get a bit bundled up, and you'll know what that's like. Sometimes you're just feeling really kind of sort of emotional, and you're maybe not sure why. And if that carries on for a long period of time, those emotions can really build up and become kind of all clogged up, all mixed up. Imagine a bunch of kittens running around a bunch of wool balls, making a right old mess amongst all those emotions. And so we're not completely certain what we feel. Do we feel angry? Do we feel anxious? Do we feel fearful? We're not sure, actually. They're all kind of mixed up and confused. So what can we do about that? Well, we just need to be emotionally aware. It's quite simple. It's just 3 questions. What happened today? What emotions were involved? And how did those emotions make me feel? What emotions were involved? So did I feel fearful because? Was I sad because? Am I a bit, not really sure, but ambivalent, bit meh because? And just those 3 questions start a conversation between the top bit of our brain and the emotional bit of our brain. And that begins a conversation where we can practice this skill. And this is a really important skill. It's called emotional granularity. Now, what that means is that we're able, slowly but surely, it's not instant, and sometimes it might take us a few days to process experiences, that we're able to go, oh, okay, I feel this because. I'll give you an example in my own experience this week. It's been a strange week this week, because obviously we had the Prime Minister speaking to us on Sunday evening at 7 o'clock and giving us a different message. We've had the stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives message. And now we're kind of told to stay alert, control the virus, and save lives. So it's a bit of a different message, isn't it? You know, that stay alert means about us taking personal responsibility to make sure that we're not doing anything that puts anyone at risk, that we're following social distancing rules. But, you know, we're now allowed to go out and exercise as many times as we like. And lots of people that perhaps weren't going into work are now being supportively encouraged, if the workplace is safe, to go into work. And then there's talk in June of some further changes. But as I said at the beginning of the webinar and the assembly, it's all about, you know, what those numbers say. We're following the data. We're following the data, which is what we should do scientifically. But so that information came out on Sunday, and, you know, Monday I was feeling really grumpy and a bit moany, a bit kind of shouty, kind of snappy. And I wonder what that was about. And it took me like all morning until the early afternoon when I realized that actually what had happened was what the Prime Minister had said had kind of brought a bunch of uncertainty into my life again. The lockdown wasn't great, and, you know, I missed being at school and missed seeing everyone, and it's a bit stressful to begin with, but, you know, I got used to it and I managed it because my brain kind of settled and the prefrontal cortex managed the amygdala's kind of chatter, and it was kind of fine. And then that new situation was introduced, which is uncertainty, and I started to feel, I suppose, kind of a bit anxious about what's going to happen and a bit worried. And it took me a few hours to get to that point. And when I realized that that's what it was, I said, no, you're anxious because of what the Prime Minister said. And it didn't make it go away instantly, but it did help me begin to process it and gave me a kind of different angle to talk about it. And I talked to my kids about it. I talked to my wife about it. And it was, you know, I kind of worked my way through it by being able to name the emotion. And it's really important that we name that emotion. That process that I've just described, it's called emotional agility. It's the ability to be aware and accept our emotions, show up to negative emotions, not push them away, not blame them on somebody else, just accept them while remaining kind and curious about our feelings, so we can be flexible in our response. So we give the best response possible, rather than like I was Monday morning, being a bit snappy and a bit grumpy with people. So what's the problem with unkind people? Well, actually, I think we need to be compassionate towards them, because I don't think they're unkind. I think they're carrying a bunch of emotional pain. In fact, the evidence would strongly say that grumpy, shouty people are carrying a bunch of emotional pain. And so if we're kind to them, it gives them an opportunity to maybe not just snap back, but maybe just, it gives them a space, maybe, to kind of just reflect on their experience. So we should be compassionate towards them, because that means that it doesn't upset us and we're doing something kind to them. We're reaching out, and we're just basically, you know, we're not jabbing back. We're kind of being kind, and that gives them a space not to just go into that dance step. Because if you're in a grumpy space, you kind of want other people to be grumpy so you can remain grumpy. But if you're not being grumpy, that's quite tricky to be grumpy at someone who isn't being grumpy back at you. So let's explore this idea a bit more in terms of the brain science. Hi everyone, welcome Neuro Ninjas. Andrew here from Action Your Potential. I just wanted to talk about kind of grumpy people, actually, just for a bit. I don't know if you've experienced any grumpy people. Obviously, we've not seen many people because we've all been socially distanced, but sometimes you just come across grumpy, unkind people that kind of make sort of assumptions about your motives that are just completely counter to what you were thinking at the time. And it's a tricky one. And I just wanted to talk about grumpy people, unkind people, that, you know, what's going on in their heads and how we should respond as Neuro Ninjas in order to maintain our own mental health and perhaps to support them. So I want to say, be kind to unkind people because they need it most. So, you know, that sounds great, Andrew, but actually, really? Really? Yeah, absolutely. Because for our own mental health, the state of someone's own emotions, grumpiness, etc., shouldn't impact on our, you know, when they say things like, you making me feel this way, no, we can't actually make them feel anything. They make themselves feel those things. And, you know, people that are really grumpy, they're generally struggling themselves. They're probably carrying some emotional pain. And we should find it in our hearts to be compassionate and kind towards those people, move ourselves towards the top of our brains, our prefrontal cortex, and be supportive and say kind things, not just react and snap and give them back what they've given us, but be supportive and kind. That will protect our mental health and build the strength in our prefrontal cortex, but it also might reach out to them and give them pause and maybe mean that they reflect a little bit, because unkind people aren't actually unkind generally. They're actually just struggling. They're struggling with something, a cognitive distortion. They're worried about something. They're carrying a bunch of emotional pain. And the more that we can reach out to those unkind people and support them, the more that we can help them look up from their kind of constant rumination, the bits that make them snappy and grumpy, and have a kind of wider view and join us as neuro ninjas, doing our rocks every day, building the best version of ourselves, spreading kindness, gratitude, and support about the place. We all got a bit philosophical there, didn't we? Thanks for listening. See you soon. Hi, everyone. Welcome, Neuro Ninja.
Go.
Hi,
need to stop him. Okay, so that is the end of the assembly. So be kind to unkind people. Take care of yourselves. It's Friday, the 15th of May. Look after yourselves. It's going to be sunny, which is fantastic. And we'll see you all soon. Keep following us on Twitter, Apart Yet Together, and let us know what you're up to. Take care. See you all soon.